But with that being said, again, thank you very much for inviting me here tonight, and I'm very honored to be here and to briefly speak with you. For me, with respect to issues concerning gays and lesbians, it is an issue about justice. Before coming to Congress, I was a Jesuit seminarian for 6 years. And during my time in the Society of Jesus, I learned some very important principles that I still live by. And one is, well, first of all, what are some of those principles? First of all, that we serve the needs of the elderly, that we serve the needs of the orphan, and that we fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. And one of those, obviously, is the fight for justice for everyone. So I've been living up to those principles, and I've been living up to those principles as I have spent the last 2 years in the House of Congress. And serving as a congressman from New Orleans, I'm very cognizant of the many social issues that we are confronted with post-Katrina. In our rebuilding process, in the history of inequality that has resulted there, and more specifically with the ongoing fight to bring everything that we need to do in order to rebuild our area and to help our citizens to rebuild their lives and to continue living a life that God wants all of us to live. So that is why in the House I was very proud to co-sponsor the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And, thank you. And I co-sponsored and voted for the bill for a very simple reason, and that is the value of justice. And if we were to look at the numbers really speak for themselves. Since Don't Ask, Don't Tell became the official military policy in 1993, more than 15,000 servicemen and women have been kicked out of the military under its restriction on openly gay service. And sadly, the servicemen and women who lose promising military careers over this unfair policy aren't the only Americans who suffer. Everyone suffers because of this unfair policy. The loss of military personnel with valuable skills is a compromise to our national security, and this is a concern during times of war. Therefore, I agree with the Log Cabin's mission statement that U.S. military policy should stay focused on fighting terrorism, which is a threat to all Americans, regardless of sexual orientation. All military personnel should be held accountable to the rules and regulations of the military. All should be equally judged and their individual rules. But those rules should not include a built-in discriminatory bias based on sexual orientation. It is a high time. Thank you. It is a high time the U.S. military joined the ranks of other countries like Australia, Canada, Germany, Great Britain, Israel, and Italy in allowing otherwise eligible citizens who are openly gay or lesbian to serve in their country and in the military, because after all, it is a matter of fairness. In March, my wife, Kate, and our 2 daughters and we were deeply touched when we accompanied my colleague, Congressman John Lewis, to Georgia, and many of our trip organized by the Faith and Politics Institute. We went to Selma, Alabama for a memorial, and we saw firsthand the bridge that was made famous by Bloody Sunday. We saw with our own eyes the highway where Congressman Lewis and other civil rights pioneers, including Dr. Martin Luther King himself, marched peacefully in support of equality. My family could only imagine how they suffered as the Alabama Highway Patrolmen answered their orderly procession with billy clubs and handcuffs. As a non-African American who did not grow up in America's Jim Crow era, there is no way I can ever completely grasp the pain and anguish these champions of justice suffered on that highway for a righteous cause, nor can I know exactly the suffering of the serviceman or woman who has been kicked out of the military just because he or she is gay. Yet there is also something universal in the stories of those who suffer discrimination that everyone can relate to, because deep within the human spirit is a God-given hunger for fairness and goodness, just as there is a natural human repulsion for wrong, injustice, and evil. To that extent, I share more specific common grounds with anyone who knows what it is like to live outside the mainstream, or what might be considered by the American standard as a normal life. For one thing, I spent the first 8 years of my life in a country torn by when my home of Saigon fell to the North Vietnamese Communists in 1975. My father was imprisoned by the North Vietnamese Communist government, and he spent 7 years in the re-education camps, suffering physical torture as well as mental and emotional humiliation. Today, my father still bears the scars of the abuse that he suffered at the hands of his oppressors. And as the first and only Vietnamese American serving in Congress, I have a keen understanding of what it's like to be a minority, since I'm the only one. Ultimately, if you're facing discrimination of any kind, whether it's because of your skin color, sexual orientation, or something else, it's all about overcoming what those of us who lived through Hurricane Katrina know quite well, that is adversity. The adversity that I've encountered in my own experience has taught me a great deal about the deeper meaning of life and human relations. Early on, I set out to lead a righteous life. As I said, after graduating from Baylor with a degree in physics, I decided to drop my dream of being a doctor and a physicist to join the Jesuit seminary to become a Catholic priest. And during my time in the Society of Jesus, I saw firsthand the sufferings of the poor, the sufferings of the refugees, as well as the fight for equality and for justice of many sectors of society. And so after great discernment, I decided to leave the religious life and eventually found my ways to the halls of Congress. And my election has been considered as one of the great anomalies of 2008.